Hey there. Awesome. Hello, everyone. We are live. I can see that there's a chat here. So if you guys have any questions this entire time I'm presenting this live stream about the saxophone or anything I'm doing, please drop a message in the chat. I'll try to respond to it. And if you have any questions, I'm going to share this at the end of the live stream too. I'm including my email so you can contact me. It's my name, kirk.j.habana@gmail.com. But anyway, hello, students, families, and friends of Anselmo Academy. Thank you for tuning in. Okay, so welcome. Once again, my name, actually I didn't say it yet, my name is Mr. Kirk. Sorry about that. And I play the saxophone. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, I actually grew up here in New York, specifically in White Plains. I was actually born in the Bronx, but my family moved to White Plains when I was very, very young. And I lived in White Plains up until I went to college. And then I went down south to study music at a conservatory in Georgia called the Schwab School of Music. And I was there for a couple of years, and I actually graduated really, really recently. I graduated right when the COVID pandemic started, and I moved back to here into New York to be closer to family, and also because I didn't know what to do next. But now I figured out what I'm doing, and I'm teaching for the Academy. So I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful to print this live stream, and I hope you enjoy this. So enough about me. We're here to learn about this. We're here to learn about the saxophone. And specifically, this is the alto saxophone, and it was invented in France. Notice I said alto. The saxophone family is actually quite big. There's actually 14 different kinds, but today I'll only be demonstrating the most common kind that you see and most everyone plays. It's called the alto saxophone. And just for visual reference, I'm not going to play them, but I brought two others. So that one was the alto. This one right here is called the soprano saxophone, and it kind of looks like this big shiny clarinet. Literally everyone asks me that usually doesn't know what a soprano saxophone is, because when thinking of saxophone, there's another one on the side of here that I'll show you that most people think is like the typical saxophone. But this is the soprano saxophone, and it is straight. It's not curved in any way, shape, or form. Plus, it kind of looks like this shiny metallic clarinet. That is everyone's first guess on this instrument when they first see it, but it is actually a saxophone. And besides that, so I show you the alto, the soprano. Here is Mr. Kirk's tenor saxophone. And if you listen to a lot of jazz, this is probably the instrument that you are going to see. And if you notice, it's kind of big, plus this part right here, the neck, is kind of curvy. I bring up the alto saxophone. That's kind of different. Alto is smaller, tenor is bigger. And I forgot to mention, this is black. This has something called a coat or finish called lacquer. It's usually this color, and it's just special. I thought it was cool. The cool color when I bought it. But yes, you notice that the alto saxophone is much smaller, and this tenor saxophone is much bigger. Plus, look at the shape of the neck. The alto neck looks like this. The tenor neck is a little curved. So those are just 3 out of the 14 possible saxophones you probably see. But actually, the 3 I showed you are 3 out of the 4 most common. Now, the saxophone is mainly associated with jazz, and there's so many famous jazz musicians that play the saxophone. But the saxophone was originally used in the classical setting. That might sound weird to you, but I promise you that classical saxophone is a thing, also because I studied that in the conservatory, so I know it's a thing. And the reason you probably haven't heard of that is because the saxophone is a young instrument compared to all the other orchestral or band instruments out there. That includes like the flutes, the violin, the clarinet, the trumpet, etc. All of those instruments get much more classical exposure than the saxophone. But you know what? Saxophone do all those things. But besides it being in the jazz sphere and in the classical sphere, it's also used in military bands and marching bands. And I know that's all really cute to know. So I actually thought for this live stream, I'm going to introduce you to the history of the saxophone in a really fun way. I'm going to introduce you the saxophone, or the history of the saxophone, through sound. And you'll see how in a second. So, the saxophone was invented in 1840, almost 150 years ago. It is the newest and the youngest of all the orchestral and band instruments, and it really isn't that old. And the problem with any new instrument is when you first develop an instrument and you want people to buy it, you need music for it. So the inventor of the saxophone, whose name is Adolph Sax, the saxophone, is named after Adolph Sax. And literally saxophone means the sound of sax. So they just literally placed name in the name of the instrument. Anyway, when Adolph Sax was trying to find people to write for his instrument, he asked a bunch of famous composers that, can you write something for my instrument, to give it exposure? And one of the most famous composers of the time, by the name of Georges Bizet, wrote this tune for the saxophone. So I'll play it for you, and maybe you'll guess it, but I'll reveal it in a second. So here is that tune. So if you don't know what that was from L'Arlésienne, the overture by Georges Bizet. And he's actually famous for writing this tune. Just a little bit extra. The little habanera from Carmen. Anyway, so yes, Georges Bizet was one of the first original people that wrote for the saxophone. And if you notice, when I play the saxophone, it has this nice, strong sound. That's because when the saxophone was originally invented, it was supposed to be used in French military bands. And it was going to be this new revolutionary instrument that could literally replace all the others. That's why there was 14 of them. So there could be like a literal saxophone replacement for almost any instrument you can think of. And while that didn't actually happen, because the saxophone didn't replace all the other instruments around it, the saxophone is still used a lot in military band music and marches. So here is an excerpt from a very, very, very famous march by someone by the name of John Philip Sousa. And I'm pretty sure most of you will know this after I play a couple of bars. And I'm pretty sure most of you figured out that was the Stars and Stripes Forever by John Philip Sousa. And that's that really, really powerful sound that saxophone makes, because again, it was made to be like this revolutionary instrument that's supposed to like compete against all the other instruments in the band, the orchestra and whatnot, and replace all of them, but it didn't do that. So after the saxophone had found its place in military bands, it started being used a lot into jazz music because it worked. Literally at that time, jazz was starting to emerge as an art form, and the saxophone just kind of like literally fell in because it was also a young instrument. Saxophone was a young style of music, the jazz was a young style of music, and it kind of went hand in hand together. So it kind of naturally fell together. So instead of me more explaining about the history of jazz, here's a couple of bars from a very, very famous jazz tune by someone by the name of George Gershwin. I'm pretty sure most of you also know this one as well. Here we go. Sorry, my headphones are falling off. And I think also most of you know that that was George Gershwin's famous melody, Summertime, from his opera Porgy and Bess. You might actually know that you might actually not know is from that opera. But yes, that is Summertime by George Gershwin. So while the saxophone was maturing in age while jazz was still developing, there's always that question in music when it's developing about, can you go higher? Can you go faster? And this led to the development of a musical style called bebop, which was pioneered by a couple of famous jazz musicians, one being Charlie Parker. And Charlie Parker wrote a lot of music for saxophone. And here's an example of one of his bebop tunes. And you may or may not know this one, but I love playing this. So here is a Charlie Parker tune. And that was Yardward Suite by Charlie Parker. So yeah. Now, I know I've been on this completely like military binge and this jazz binge, and while all that was happening in time for the saxophone, people were still actually writing classical music for the saxophone. So usually how classical music, or how the history of music has been, is there's 4 distinct stop periods. You have Baroque music, you have classical music, you have romantic music, and then this last one has many names, but I like to call it modern music. And in that sense, music had like this timeline that it progressed through naturally, but the saxophone, it had all of those happening at the same time. So while they were like writing French military music and march music for the saxophone, while they were writing jazz music for the saxophone, they were also writing classical music for the saxophone. So here is one of those classical pieces being written for the saxophone at the same time, and this was written by a not so famous composer by the name of Paul Crescent. Well, Paul Crescent is really famous in the saxophone world, but in terms of every other instrument, he's written like a couple short pieces for the piano and for organ, actually. But this is the music that was being written for saxophone at that time. And that is an excerpt from Paul Crescent's Sonata for saxophone, the second movement. I also wrote this really famous concerto, but I never was going to say that because it's one of my favorite pieces, but this is actually his sonata for alto saxophone. And I'm sure you could hear from that little excerpt I just played, a lot of people were enamored, or they really, really loved the vocal quality of this saxophone. And a lot of composers want to see, could they transcribe or rewrite music for the saxophone? Because one of the things, like I said earlier, is saxophone is a young instrument, and it does not have a lot of music written for it. And what a lot of people did when there wasn't enough music for saxophone in the early days is they took music from another instrument and we wrote it so the saxophone can play it. And that's what we call a transcription. And I really love playing transcriptions. Those are the music I grew up listening to. There's like beautiful violin pieces, piano pieces, cello pieces, vocal pieces. And I always want to play on the saxophone. And guess what? I actually can. So this is a transcription of a very famous piece written by Sergei Rachmaninoff. Very, very, very famous classical melody. And I think after I play it a little bit, most of you will know what song this is. And if you don't know what that is yet, that is Sergei Rachmaninoff's Vocalise. You can hear how the saxophone really captures that beautiful aria-like singing. And it's because a lot of composers have said that the saxophone is an instrument that's closest to the human voice because of all the weird things it can do with sound manipulation. And I'll talk a little bit of that later. And actually, you know what? That's enough of me talking. Let's get to your saxophone lesson, because that's what we're here for. So I'm going to give you a bunch of pointers that will help you have some solid fundamentals to get better at the saxophone with. So let's start with the parts of the saxophone. So give me one moment. I'm actually going to disassemble this. And the first part that I have right here is what we refer to as the body of the saxophone. The body of the saxophone is this huge, the heaviest piece of metal. This can be anywhere between 10 to 15 pounds. It's actually quite heavy. And it's literally one long piece of metal that's bent right here. And again, this is the body. What's attached to the body is what I have over here. Oops, one moment, the saxophone's falling. We have the neck. The neck is the second largest piece of metal on the saxophone and literally screws on right here. And I'll show you how that happens later. But yes, this is the neck of the saxophone. I see some people in the chat. Hello there. Yes, so here's the neck. That's the second part. We also have the mouthpiece. So the mouthpiece, this is the mouthpiece assembly. There's two other parts related to it. But the mouthpiece literally goes on the cork of the saxophone. And this is probably the most important part of the saxophone, because if you damage the neck and if you damage the saxophone, there's some easy fixes you could do to repair them. But if you break this, it's really, really hard to fix, and you might have to get a new one. So this is literally also where sound starts. So that's three parts. We have the body, we have the neck, we have the mouthpiece, and then the two parts that were attached to it are something called the ligature, right here. So the ligature, this is my ligature, and then the reed. So this ligature is literally there so it can hold the reed to the mouthpiece. It literally slides over like this. See? Slides over like this. And then the reed goes in this space right here. And for anyone that plays saxophone, this reed might look a little weird. It's because it's made out of plastic. I'll get into more why I like plastic reeds. The short answer is this isn't affected by temperature and humidity. If you notice, being here in New York, it's been raining and flooding a lot. There's been a lot of flash storms, and then it's hot. And it's raining and flooding a lot, and then it's hot. I also went to conservatory down in Georgia where it was very, very humid all the time. It was hot and humid. And that is not good for a reed because it's made out of wood. It's made out of cane, and it could swell and compress, and it just gets disfigured. And this isn't affected by any of that. You literally just slap this on the mouthpiece and play. So those are 5 parts. We talked about the body. We talked about the neck. That's 2. We talked about the mouthpiece, the ligature, and the reed. The last part is what's around my neck right here. This is called the neck strap, or commonly called the sling. One of the two. So it's really handy for holding the saxophone. And actually, let's talk about how to assemble it now. So when you look at the saxophone, the body right here, you notice that there is a little loop right here. This is where the neck strap goes. All neck straps, and I'll talk about what is different about my neck strap. I know it looks a little different. Has a little hook that goes into this little hole right there and attaches. So the next thing you want to do is get your neck assembly together. So it has those other parts I was talking about earlier. You have the reed, the ligature, and the mouth. And while I'm setting that up, I'm not going to demonstrate it because I won't be able to talk, but you want to wet your reed with this bark end, the fat piece, not this part. And for you, those play saxophone, that's probably a little weird. Like, why are you putting this part right here in your mouth and not this? It's because this part right here is what we need to seal against the mouthpiece. This part right here is always in your mouth when you play the saxophone, like that. So it's always going to be wet. So you want to actually get this side wet more, because if I demonstrate, just put a little bit of saliva on there, put it on the mouthpiece without any ligature. That saliva can help create a seal, which will actually help sound production later. So yes, you want to, the entire time you put your saxophone together, put the butt in, put the bark of the reed in your mouth like this. And again, I'm not going to do that because I have to talk through all of this. So yes, do that. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your mouthpiece and you're going to put it on the cork end of the neck like this. And how far do you need to put it in? Well, it depends, because if you're playing with band, orchestra, whatnot, you have to tune to the appropriate instrument, or you can use a tuner. I kind of know where to put my reed because I put a little notch on the cork. You probably can't see it. It's right here. So I know that's exactly how far I need to push it in most times. But then once you have this ready, I like to put the ligature on like this. Another weird thing, this is a reverse ligature. So the screw is on top right here. Most ligatures are like this with the screw on bottom, but mine goes on top. So be aware of that. And then the last thing is you put the reed on. So there's two schools of thoughts of assembling this, because some people say you put the ligature on first, then slide the reed under. I was taught put the reed on first, then the ligature. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate. And another thing is, when you put your reed on, you want to make sure it's lined perfectly. You don't want it too far to one side, because then it's not on the mouthpiece. You see all of this, what we call the table exposed. And then you don't want to put it on the other side, that's awkward. And you want to put it too high. It's a great thing that my reed is made of plastic. As you can see that right there, you can see a lot of light through it. You want the tip to line up with the tip. And we have these parts besides the table. We have the edges called the rails. And you want your reed to be exactly on the rails like this. And what I like to do is I like to hold it down with my left thumb. So my left thumb is holding the reed. I'll take my ligature, put it over, and line everything perfectly. Because this part, I kind of alluded to this earlier, this mouthpiece is where the sound starts. So if this isn't set up properly, troubleshoot there first. And like I said, I'm going to give you a bunch of tips so you have a great foundation to get better on the saxophone with, and this is literally one of them. Have a good mouthpiece setup or assembly. So the next thing is you want to put the neck on the saxophone. And I had to unstrap my neck to show you something. Not a lot of people know this, but if you look at the neck of the saxophone, there is this little brass part right here that is actually a guide. I'm not sure if you can really see it. It's this extra piece of metal that I'm touching right now. And it ends right here. And this is a guide that's supposed to match up to what we call the octave mechanism. You see right here, this little black part. So on some saxophones, it can be different colors. Mine's black, some it's clear, some, I don't know what color it is. But you want this piece of metal to line up with that little black part right there. It should literally go shoop, down a straight line like that. And that's because if you don't do that, it'll mess up with this lever, which can cause sound problems. So again, I'm trying to give you the great fundamental techniques that everyone knows that will help set you up for success. So make sure that's set up. And the last thing you want to make sure is when you put your saxophone on, actually two more things, you want to make sure the screws are tight. If the screws aren't tight, you'll be able to move the neck like this. So there's a screw when the saxophone's facing forward from you on the right side, it's the neck adjustment screw. And if you put it at the right firmness, you can see how much if you move my hand, the neck won't move. And the last thing is you want to make sure your neck strap is the appropriate height. When you set up your saxophone, you want to be able to come up to you where this is a little too low. Do you see where this mouthpiece is touching right now? It's touching the bottom. It's not even going in my mouth. So you want the saxophone, without you doing anything, it should go into your mouth. And that's a little better, but if I don't know if you can see, the saxophone's resting on my bottom lip. That's why I can't really talk right now. So that's still actually a little too low. You don't want that either. You basically want the saxophone to go perfectly into your mouth, and it should look something like this. Yeah, because even when it's here, I can still talk because it's not pressing against anything. So make sure that's set up perfectly if you want to play the saxophone well from the get-go. All right, so that's part of the saxophones and assembling it together. Let's talk about playing posture and position. A couple of basics for you need to know that the saxophone will be played while sitting or standing. Right now, we're going to sit because when you play the saxophone, you're probably learning in the band setting, like in middle, high school, elementary band, one of those things. And if that's true, then you're going to sit the entire time. You're never going to stand. And the only times you would stand while playing the saxophone is if you're playing quartet or chamber setting, or if you're playing a solo. But most of you are probably learning in band, so go ahead and sit. And when you're sitting, you need to make sure that you're sitting up straight like this, with your at the edge of the chair, and with both your feet flat on the floor. And because you want to encourage a good posture because it helps your lungs. I'm going to allude to this later, but the saxophone is a wind instrument. We need to use wind to play it really well. And we get our wind from our lungs. And if we do something like slouch, if you try this with me, go ahead, slouch like this. Your lung is in an alto position. You can't breathe in deeply. If I were to go like, that's a shallow breath. But if I sit up like this, I could go, I could breathe in much deeper, and I could blow up for much longer. So make sure you're standing up straight. Another thing that people ask is, where should the horn go? Actually, horn is a slang term for saxophone. Sorry about that. So should it be on the side like this, or should it be in front of you like this? The answer is yes. And the reason why is, for young beginners, it's easier to put the saxophone on your side like this. It's because if you're a young beginner, you're probably really small. And if you angle the saxophone like this, you can actually reach all the keys. And when you angle like this, it's actually sitting against the side of your thigh. So it's usually your right thigh. It actually should be your right thigh. And a lot of the weight is being distributed right there. That also helps relieve tension off your neck because most neck straps go around and like literally it's like pulling at you. So to help relieve that weight, put the saxophone to the side like this and put it like this. And if you notice, it's a little weird because I'm tilting. So that is only acceptable if you're young and small. That is just the thing you need to do to play the saxophone. It's a small compromise. But if you are an intermediate or advanced, you should play with the saxophone like I've been doing, with your saxophone in between your legs, facing straight forward. Because when you do it like this, you can encourage that nice posture, which gives your lungs the best ability to fill with air. So beginner, intermediate, advanced. Beginner, intermediate, advanced. Hope that was helpful. Another thing is, eventually, we're going to talk about how to play the saxophone. Sorry, I like talking, I like teaching. You can see me getting a little excited when I explain these things. It's just who I am as a person. But we got to get all these basics first. So we need to talk about what our fingers are doing. When we play the saxophone, we're going to use all 10 fingers, except we're a little lazy. In piano, we like to count up to 5, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in both hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In saxophone, we're even lazier. We count up to 3. The reason why is our thumbs are holding the position of the saxophone. What do I mean by that? So on the body of the saxophone, on this bottom part right here, there's something called a thumb rest. Your right hand thumb is going to slide right there and then to hold and balance the saxophone. Similarly, on this part up here, your left hand is going to go on this thumb rest. So there is a little hook. Sometimes it's called the thumb hook right here for the right hand. There's a thumb rest for the left hand. And yes, the right hand plays the bottom part of the saxophone. I'll go into that more later. And your left hand plays the top part. But that's literally what your thumbs are doing. Your thumbs holding, guiding, coordinating. Then we have finger ones, your pointers, finger twos, your middles, finger threes, your rings. For all you pianists out there, that's probably really confusing. Sorry about that. But finger ones again, finger twos, finger threes. And then you have your pinkies. Your pinkies will lay naturally on these side spatula figures right here. There's also the table here for the left-hand pinky, and we're not going to really talk about that too much today. That's a little advanced, because I just, again, want to give you strong fundamentals for today. But basically, your fingers are going to lay nice and even on the saxophone, and remember that fingering system, because the other thing we need to talk about is your hand position. So do this with me. I want you to take your hands, drop them by your sides, relax them, let them dangle for a bit. Once you bring your hand up, is going to be in this nice curved position like this. Do you see this right here? This is the hand position you need when you play saxophone. Nice and relaxed. It's not like this. You're not making like a claw or something. Or, I don't know, one of my friends used to play like, pretend like his fingers were like dinosaurs. Something like this. No, your hands are nice and relaxed. If you can't imagine, like just do this. Shake your hands out. Don't even try to shape them. This is the hand position you want your hands to be in when playing the saxophone. So let's start with the right hand. Like I said earlier, your right hand goes under this thumb hook right here. Then your first finger goes right here. If you noticed, there is a pearl. And I'm sorry if my pearls are black. It probably doesn't look like what's on your saxophone, but mine are black. And your first right hand finger should go on this top pearl. Your second right hand finger should go on this middle pearl. Your right hand finger should go on this third pearl. And then your pinky can go usually right here on this top spatula. So, from bird's eye distance, your right hand kind of just like sits there on the saxophone. And if you notice this hand shape, it's a relaxed hand shape with a little more curvature to that. That's because my hands are small, so I have to curve it a little more. But that's okay. This is just about what your hand should look like on the right side of the saxophone. And again, your right hand plays the bottom part, or what we refer to as the bottom stack of the saxophone, like this. So your left hand is going to play the upper stack. So remember, like I said earlier, your left hand thumb goes here. And this is a little tricky, so watch Mr. Kirk in the camera. So on this upper part of the saxophone, there are actually 3 keys right next to each other. Again, sorry it doesn't look like the way it should be because my saxophone has been customized. But right here, this first key that's attached to this pad is this circular thing right here, this pad cut. Your finger needs to go on the this button, this pearl, that's the word I'm looking for, right here. So finger 1 goes on the pearl. Not up here. This is something else that we used to play high notes in saxophone, and not on this really, really small key. That actually no finger goes on. You would actually have to slide to play that. But again, that's later. So your first finger goes here. Your second finger goes here on the second note that's on a pad cup right here. And then your third finger goes on this bottom key right here. And your pinky goes on this table mechanism right here. We're not going to really talk about this. Your finger can go on any of these. I like to keep it up here just to keep that curved hand shape that I was talking about before. And that's literally what our hands are doing. So, next thing. So we talked about parts of the saxophone. We talked about posture. We talked about position, hand position, whatnot. Now we're going to talk about something called embouchure. And embouchure is important to the saxophone because embouchure is what we need to do with our lips to play the saxophone. And the word embouchure comes from the French word bouche, which literally means mouth. And it literally means how we shape our mouth to play the saxophone, like I said earlier. And I brought a visual demonstration to help with this. This is a drawstring bag. And I want you to imagine your lips as this part of the drawstring bag right here. And you notice when you have a drawstring bag, all you're going to do is you're going to pull it, and it closes. Do you notice the action that this tip of the bag is doing? It's starting circular, and then it's kind of closing all around it. It's going like this. Start circular, and start closing all around it like this. And that is what your lips need to do on the saxophone. Let me demonstrate what happens if you don't do that. I can't get any sound of the saxophone when I do that. And that's actually really tiring to do because I'm blowing so much air and it's like very, very little is going through the saxophone. That's like that wispy sound that you're hearing, and everything else is going through the sides of my mouth. But if I create that drawstring embouchure, again, my lips are going like this motion. You can see it right here. That is how you want to form an embouchure to play the saxophone. So, next thing we need to talk about, which I hinted at earlier, is tone production and breathing. So like I said earlier, the saxophone is a woodwind instrument. And the most important part of that phrase is the part wind, because we need air to literally create sound on this instrument. So do this for me for a second. I want you to sit up straight. You're going to take a deep breath. You're going to release. Let's do that together. Here we go. In. Out. One more time. In. Out. That exhale that we've been doing right there is literally how it should feel to play the saxophone. You don't need to try so hard like that. Even when I did that, do you see what's happening to my lips? It's kind of like tightening, and it creates a very thin sound on the saxophone. So we just really want to go. Think maybe the word toe. If you can do that, exhale, that is the airstream or the air column you need to play on the saxophone effectively. Another thing that sometimes I see a lot of students do, which inhibits a good sound in saxophone, is what I call the blowfish face. Like that. And that sounds weird. Did you hear that weird sound? Like when I was trying to blow air out, it's because there's so much tension in your cheeks. And when you try to release it, it creates this funny sound, and that has no place in playing saxophone. You want to relax your cheeks and just go. All your air is sort of in your lungs, and you release it from the lungs like that. And then if you do that, you will be good to go. And a fun way to practice this, I like hinting things early if you haven't figured that out. So I hinted earlier that you need to make sure this is right before you play saxophone. A great way to check that and to practice sound production is making something that sounds like a duck call. Let me demonstrate. I'm literally playing into this mouthpiece assembly by itself. It's the mouthpiece, the reed, and the ligature. And I know that probably sounds really silly, but literally, if you could do that comfortably, that means everything here is correct, and then everything here is correct. Because those are the two parts of sound production at the beginning of the saxophone. If you master that, all you literally have to do is press all these button combinations of the saxophone. So literally, a lot of the work starts from learning how to blow efficiently the saxophone, like that. If you can do that, you'll be good for the saxophone. So, one last thing before we actually get to playing. I'm so sorry that I'm taking time to learn all these concepts, but again, these are the fundamental things you need to know to play the saxophone well. And again, we talked about parts of the saxophone and assembly. We talked about playing position, posture. We talked about embouchure formation. We just talked about tone production and breathing. Now we're going to talk about something called articulation. And articulation on the saxophone involves the tongue making contact with the reed. And when I was a young student, there was a phrase that always was told to me by all my teachers. They used to say, top of the tip of the tongue on the top of the tip of the reed. It's kind of like a tongue twister if you think about it. Let me say that again. Top of the tip of the tongue on the top of the tip of the reed. Top of the tip of the tongue on top of the tip of the reed. So they're literally asking you to do your tongue on the tip of the reed, which is more of an ideal, so you don't have to think about that. But a much easier way to describe that is, can you say two? Try that with me. Say two. Two. Try it again. Two. Can you say that twice in a row now? Here we go. Two, two. Let's change the syllable. Can we say do? Do, do. How about lu? Lu, lu. This is the syllabic practice that you need to do to really get your tongue muscles really good away from the saxophone, because you can't technically practice at the saxophone. There's a couple of things you can do away from it, and one of them is just practicing these syllables. So let's make an exercise out of it. Can we say two 4 times? I'm going to say it 4 times first, and I want you to say it 4 times. Here we go. Miss Kirsten will go first. 1, 2, here I go. 2, 2, 2. Now you. Awesome. Could you try it again? I'll start with 4 with me, then 4 with you. Here we go. 1, 2, here we go. 2, 2, 2, 2. Now you. Perfect. And for some of you that know saxophone, you might be thinking, like, why is he saying 2? I've been taught like ta or da or something else like that. And yes, ta and da work as wonderful ways to learn the use of the tongue and articulation on the saxophone. When you say ta, you say da. Even when you hear me say it, ta, da, it's very harsh. When you say to, do, it's very light. When you say ta, da, that encourages like really harsh tonguing sounds on the saxophone, and you don't want to do that. So think to, do, or really, really advanced one is knee. You know, like that part of your leg that's like this right here, that knee. Yeah, say knee. That's a very light tonguing syllable. And like I said earlier, you can make an exercise out of it. You can practice just saying seeing how fast you can say it or how long you can say it. It's going two, because the thing is, your tongue is a muscle. And if you know anything about working out, you want to work out muscles so they get stronger. And that saying those syllables is a great way to practice tonguing or getting that tongue muscle stronger without actually using the saxophone. You can do that at your desk. If you're a student in school, you can do that at work. If you're I actually used to do that a lot in school, and people thought I was crazy, but I was literally practicing away from my instrument. And there's a bunch of ways to do that. But that is all I'm going to say about articulation. And now let's finally get to your first song on the saxophone. And I'm going to start with teaching you a jazz standard called C Jam Blues. And it might sound weird because you're saying, like, Mr. Kirk, you're about to teach the song and you haven't taught us any notes. Well, yes, that's true. But the cool thing about C Jam Blues is it only uses 2 notes. I'm going to show them to you right now on the camera. It uses G on the saxophone and C on the saxophone. So all we're going to use is our left hand right here. And use those 3 fingers from earlier, put them on the saxophone. And G is left hand 1, 2, and 3 together like this. So this is G right here. Make sure all your fingers are down. And then when you want to play C, you lift 1 and 3. You're going to keep 2 down. So it's only your finger 2 down. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but when you're playing saxophone and you blow the saxophone, you don't have to reset your fingers like this. You just literally keep it down and use your syllables right here to create sound. Let me demonstrate that. So here is me playing saxophone. And literally, I'm going to keep my hand still. All I'm doing is going 2-2 in the saxophone to create sound. So, yes, that is how you create sound on the saxophone. And these are the 2 notes we need for C Jam Blues. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate the song for you. So listen. 1, 2, 1, 2, here, go. So that was it. Do you notice anything? Besides the fact it's 2 notes, which I told you earlier. If you're really, really listening, I'm sorry, I'm having response issues, which I was having those lips. And you guess what? There's the reed. I could pull it off immediately, so that means it's a little dry. So again, if you're having any issues on the saxophone, check this part. That's probably the answer to your problems. But anyway, yes, what did you notice about C Jam Blues? Give me a second to think about it. If your answer was you heard the same thing 3 times in a row, you're right. Music is a series of patterns, and once you understand that, you will unlock so many different songs, so many possibilities to yourself. And you literally heard da-da, 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 da-da 3 times in a row. There's an actual reason for that. I'm not going to go into that. It's a little advanced. But literally, it's the same pattern repeated 3 times, and that one pattern has 3 simple parts. So I'm going to sing it to you. Here's the pattern. 1, 2, 1, 2, here we go. Da da, da da, da da, da da. Here's the first 3 parts. It's da da. So it's 2 really quick da das with a pause after it. Move that one more time. Da da. You know, sing that with me. Let's do it together. 1, 2, 1, 2, here we go. Da da. Pause. That's it. Try it again. 1, 2, 1, 2, here we go. Da da. Good. That's the first part. Let's add the second part. We're going to learn the second part first, then come back to the first part. The second part is da da, da da. So it's like that first part repeated. Yeah. Sounds easy, right? Music is patterns. So let's practice that second part together. 1, 2, 1, 2, sing with me. Da da, da da. Let's do that again. 1, 2, sing with me. Da da, da da. Now we're going to put those 2 parts together. It's the da da, rest, da da, da da together. Let's do that together. 1, 2, 1, 2, sing with me. Da da, rest, da da, da da. If you could do that, you're 2/3 of the way done learning this jazz song. Do you think you're going to learn a jazz song today? Probably not, but I like teaching things like this in fun ways. Anyway, the last part is this. Da da. So I'm going to hold that first note. Da da. And the last note, which is that C, I'll get more into that later, it is right before the second snap. I'll do it slow. G, C. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but all the dadas I was saying earlier were just G's. G, G, rest. G, 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 C. If you can place that first G right on the B, G, C, and that C right before the second snap, you are good. So let's change what we've been doing. Let's sing the notes together. Let's go from the top. We're going to do it 2 times, and then we're going to do it on the saxophone. Ready? 1, 2, a 1, 2, here we go. G, G, rest. G, 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 C. If you think you can you finger the notes on the saxophone while we sing it? So it's G, G. You're not going to move your hand. G, 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 C. And getting that coordination right here is going to be a little hard, but that's okay. Try your best. Let's try from the beginning. Singing and what we're going to say fingering. Like you're going to show your fingers and practice like you're going to play the saxophone except for that blowing in there because we're singing right now. Try it from the top. Singing and fingering. 1, 2, a 1, 2. Here we go. G, G, rest. G, 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 C. Yeah, let's try it together playing. And if you're watching this in the replay, go ahead and watch that part of the video over and over again. And then if you get comfortable, you can go ahead and do that. Let's do it together. 1, 2, from the top. And that's it. If you can do that 3 times in a row, then you know this jazz standard called C Jam Blues. And a fun way I like to practice music, classical or jazz, is I like to play it with a backing track. Sometimes that's something as simple as a recording. Like if I'm practicing like a classical saxophone sonata or concerto, I always play with a famous recording from a very reputable source. I'll talk about that later. But with jazz, you can literally go on YouTube and let me turn this on and play with the backing track. So Mr. Kirk likes using technology. I always keep this. This is a Bluetooth speaker. I just turned it on. It's going to sync to my phone. And hopefully in a second, you will hear this backing track. Yeah. Can you try playing along? Listen to this. Here we go from the beginning. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. That's it. And I can't not teach you some little bit of jazz without teaching you something called improvisation. Improvisation is like kind of like you do whatever you want. Before we do that, I have to teach you a couple more notes. So before I teach you the notes, if you don't know, if you do know, that's wonderful. But if you don't know, the music is designed to use the first 7 letters of the alphabet. Musicians are super lazy. I know there's 26. Earlier, like I said, like we had 10 fingers, piano player counted 5, saxophone goes 3. We like to be lazy. And instead of saying the 26 letters of the alphabet, we like the first 7. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And that pattern repeats all over the saxophone. So I taught you G right here. If you lift one finger, keep the first 2 down, this is A. If you lift one finger, keep the first down, that's B. So G, A, B. It's like I'm going up or through my alphabet. So then I taught you C. Let's talk about D. D is all 6 fingers down. And you can either play a low D or a high D or middle D technically. And the way I differentiate them two is, I don't know if you see this before, but there is an octave key right here on the saxophone. It's above where my left thumb goes. So at this angle, my thumb extends right here. And if I press it, I go high. If I don't depress it, I play low notes in the saxophone. So high, low, high, low, depending if I press it or not. Anyway, I can get to the D by pressing all 6 fingers, 3 in the left hand, 3 in the right hand, all down together with the octave key. Then I go up, remove one finger, E, up, remove one finger, F, up, remove one finger, back all the way to G. So I just taught you G from G on the saxophone. So without the octave keys, my thumb's here, G, A, B, middle finger C, and then go all 6 with the octave key. So before I showed you out here, so I wasn't pressing it. Now I'm pressing it. Not sure if you can hear that. So D, E, F, G. And you can use those notes, any combination of those notes, to improvise, because you are literally going to play any of those 7 notes in any rhythm, in any combination. So it's going to be hard for me because I'm trying to keep this really simple. So I'm just going to demonstrate what you can kind of figure out. Here's the backing track again. I'll play the head and then I'll improvise a little bit. One more time. Here we go. Solo. Play any of those notes. The thing I like about improvisation and with playing jazz is you get to be creative and there's no wrong answers. And you kind of basically just get to play. You get to have fun. So I encourage you, like after you learn that first part, we refer to the head or the theme or the melody of C jam blues, the da 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 part. Try some improvisation. Explore and see what you think is right. I use only the 7 notes I showed you, and you could actually do so much more with a bunch of other notes. Let's stick to those, and you will be really, 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 really good. And you know what? I'm going to teach you another song. Another song that you can learn using all the stuff I taught you, plus one change, is I'm going to teach you a scale on the saxophone. So I taught you how to go from G to A to B to C to D to E. I'm going to teach you another note called F sharp. So it's like F, because this is how we got F before. We use 3 in the left hand and 1 in the right hand. But if you use 3 in the left hand and this one right here, the middle of the right hand, this will get you F sharp and go to G. And that is the G scale. So I'm going to demonstrate that in quarter notes real quick. 1, 2, here I go. Can you try that with me? We're going to go up a G scale and we're doing quarter notes. 1, 2, here we go. Good. Can we do that going down? And sorry, I can't snap because I need both my hands to play saxophone. I'll go to the count off and then we're going to go down, keeping rhythm together. 1, 2, here we go. And that's literally your first scale in saxophone, if this is your first saxophone lesson. You go up a scale, you're going to go down a scale. And the descending scale is important because that is our second song. I'm going to teach you something, or the song that's been called the most famous scale in the world. And you might know it after I demonstrate it. Here is that song, that most famous scale in the world. Sorry. You know what that is? Let me do it again. If you haven't figured it out yet, that is Joy to the World. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. It's literally a scale with pauses. And I'm not actually going to tell you where the pauses are. I want you to use your ears. I'm going to play it, I'm going to sing it, and then I'm just going to literally tell you it's a G scale going down, and I want you to try it with me. So this is just first you listening to Mr. Kirk. Here we go. 1, 2, here I go. Now we're going to sing it together. I'm going to use my hands to help show you where it is. 1, 2, here we go. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. One more time. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. If you watch my hands, I'm trying to give you a hint, like I was pausing, but I think you're smart enough to figure it out. So let's try it together. And it's that G scale going down. 1, 2, here we go. Awesome. So that is 2 songs. And you technically learn, if you want to be really specific, you learned a jazz standard and you learned a classical song. It's a little more complicated than that, but I'm going to call it classical for now. But yes, so hopefully that's been really, really fun for you, but we're not done yet because I decided to do a fun little segment of this video called What's in My Case? Because for some reason, saxophonists always like to talk about gear. We like to know like what everyone else is playing on or what other little doohickeys out there that could potentially help us play better there are. Not sure what it is, but it is a thing in the saxophone world. And if there are any saxophonists out there, this is geared for you. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is this saxophone. This is a Selmer Series 2. Selmer Series 2. So Selmer is one of the big 4 brands out there. A lot of people say it might be the classical standard. Other people say Yamaha is it. So usually those are the top 2 contention. The other 2 big names are like Yanagisawa, Carworth. I mean, they're also good for classical, but it's always a lot of people play either Selmer or Yamaha. And yes, this is my Selmer Series 2. It is quite old. It's older than me. I believe it was manufactured in 1956. I'm not that old. So it's what we refer to as a vintage horn. It's in good condition. I like playing it. It sounds great. So I still use it to this day. That's my horn. Another thing is the mouthpiece or ligature. And it's this guy right here that I was playing. If you notice, mine is like a kind of weird shape. It's a teardrop shape. And that's because it is specifically a classical mouthpiece designed to give me this super nice round tone you've been hearing this entire time. And it's specifically called the Selmer concept. It's kind of expensive, so I would not advise you to start with something like that. If you're a student and you want to get a nice, good mouthpiece at the beginning, get the Selmer C-Star. Let me say that one time. Selmer C-Star. This concept is like twice that cost, and you'd have to like go through a couple of them. Another thing is when you buy a saxophone mouthpiece, don't just buy one. See if you can trial them, so you can get multiple, because they're machine manufactured. One might be better than the other, so see if there's one in that lot that you really, really like. But yes, that is my mouthpiece, and this is my ligature. I used to play on much more expensive ligatures. This is just something called a Rovner, specifically a Rovner Versa X, and it's only not so expensive. This one's $40, which might sound expensive to you, but I used to have a $100 metal ligature, and the reason why I don't have that anymore is because they bend out of shape. So I was tired of spending so much money like that and like on all this equipment, so I bought something that's much cheaper that works. And this is actually getting a little old, so I might have to replace it. But yes, it's called a Rovner Versa X. Next thing is the neck strap. And again, if you play saxophone or if you have a saxophone, you might notice that this neck strap is a little weird. The reason why it's a little weird is because it's technically not a neck strap. It doesn't go around my neck like a loop like that. It's sitting on my shoulders. This is a variant of a neck strap called a harness. A harness goes on your body. And the reason why a lot of people like harnesses nowadays more than neck straps is because neck straps literally pull on your neck the entire time. So that's uncomfortable, and for a lot of younger students, it causes neck fatigue. But this is literally on my shoulders. Other harness actually loop around your body. Mine is just literally on my shoulders. And they literally just hold the weight down here instead of on your neck. So yes, a harness. And I think you should consider getting one. I think they're a good, decent one is $20 or $30. So try not to get a neck strap, especially if you play one of the bigger saxophones like the tenor. If you play Barry, please, please, please do not use a neck strap. It will hurt your neck. Get a harness instead. Another thing is reeds. And I talked about my synthetic reed, my plastic reed over there that I like to use because it's not affected by temperature. But most people play on cane reeds. And I like to use Van Doren's. They're always the classical standard, I felt. And, well, Desire is making good ones. But I use Van Doren blue boxes, the traditional standard. And what I have here is something called a reed case. And I actually have like actual reed cases like this, but then I put them in this Tupperware. The reason why is this right here. This is a humidity control pack. And this is what fights all those weather changes I was talking about before. Like technically, even though I gravitate towards synthetic reeds, I can use a lot of cane reeds because of this reed case right here. And it's literally a piece of Tupperware, a humidity control pack. This Tupperware is like $6, $7. A pack of this is like $10, and you have multiple. And this literal reed case, I think this is called a Van Doren Hydro case, was like $40, $50, $60. I think this one was $60 because it's the tenor saxophone version. The alto was like $40. So way more expensive than this and this. So if you want a decent working reed case, you can put them in this makeshift reed case that is literally an airtight, spill-proof. That's important. It's an airtight, leak-proof, spill-proof piece of Tupperware plus a humidity control pack that you can easily get on Amazon for very, very cheap. Another thing I have in my case. Oh, I forgot to show this other mouthpiece. I have a jazz mouthpiece too. I was playing the classical mouthpiece. It's much easier. It take too much time in between to go between my jazz classical setup. But this is a specific kind of jazz mouthpiece from the company Sios, or Shape Your Own Sound. It's actually 3D printed, which is really, really cool. It helps get you that customized sound that you're always looking for as a saxophonist. So you can go on the website and find it out. Another thing I have in my case is something called a swab. When you play the saxophone, your spit gets stuck in there. So one of the things you really, really want to have, I mean, technically everything I've talked about before are things you should have. We'll talk about extra things. Actually, the next thing after this are extra things. This is what you can pull through your instrument to clean it. And my specific saw, created by ProTech, has 2 strings. So you can put it on one side, pull it through, and pull it through the other side, pull it back, pull it through, pull it back. And it's really, really cool. It helps get the moisture out of saxophone, because moisture can damage the inside of the pad, specifically of your saxophone. Besides that, I have a couple of extra things that are not necessary but still helpful. And in line with sort of that swab, I have something called pad savers. And one of my former teachers used to call this a fuzzy Christmas tree because it kind of looks like that. But it's literally microfiber put on a stick. And what you can do is you can put it in your saxophone. Funnily enough, the other name of this is called a shove it, because you literally shove it in your saxophone. And it literally sits in there and absorbs the moisture because it's microfiber, so it absorbs the water and whatnot. And I also have one for my neck. So if I ever disassemble this, I can literally put this in my neck and also absorb the moisture there. Because with a neck swab, you want to clean in the body of the saxophone and also in the neck as well. Another thing that I don't have an extra on me I can show you is something called a mouthpiece patch. If you could see it, there's something on top of the mouthpiece right here, this little patch right here. And the reason you want that there is because it helps protect your teeth. Your teeth are always, I don't know if it's like this. And, well, sorry, protect your teeth, but also the mouthpiece. Because if you dig into the material that mouthpiece is made of, you could potentially damage it. And this is super expensive, mouthpieces are. I mean, the saxophone's the most expensive thing, but these are probably the second most expensive. You want to protect them at all costs because it's a huge monetary investment. So mouthpiece pads do that, but it also helps you from your teeth sliding. They'll keep it right there, sitting right there. So that will help aid in tone production. Another thing is something I didn't use today, but I sometimes use for playing for long times, is called a mouth guard. It's because when you create an embouchure, this little thing right here, it's made out of plastic. It's literally like a sports mouth guard. I cut it up because I only need it on my bottom teeth right here. And it literally goes there and protects my teeth. Because when you form an embouchure, notice here, I actually roll my bottom lip in a little bit. Like that. And if you play like that for a couple of hours, I used to practice a lot more than I do nowadays. It is very fatiguing. It strains the muscle right here. So if you put this mouth guard, it protects it. The only thing is, like, another reason I didn't wear it right now, you can hear I have like a little lisp, so it's hard to talk. And you can literally use a mouth guard, or there is customizable ones like this right here I have, where you can literally mold it, put it in hot water, put it on your bottom teeth, and it will fit like a glove every single time. The last thing that I have that I'm going to share with you is something called key leaves. And this goes back to protecting the saxophone. So the thing is, moisture can get in the saxophone, even though I have the swab and this Christmas tree, the pad saver, it could still, keys can still stick. So these key leaves right here go in specific parts of the saxophone. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it'll force something. So you see this pad right here is closed. If I put the key leaf under it, it's going to keep it open the entire time. See how it's not closing? I literally put it on the arm and sitting over here. This is normally closed, but this is another place where a lot of stickiness will be on the saxophone. I put the key leaf under, push it in, and voila, it is now open the entire time. And the reason I call it key leaves is because it kind of looks like a leaf, the shape, and like a stem, kind of like a plant. It was a really cool invention. It's something that's more modern. I think it was made the last 2 years, which is awesome because it helps prolong the life of your saxophone. If you get into saxophone, it's something you definitely want to consider getting. And besides that, the last thing I'm going to stress is music is an art form based in sound. So this is something that a lot of teachers forget to mention, but we need, as teachers, we need to help you as students. We need to teach you as students how to listen. And you can do that by yourselves by listening to a lot of songs, because music is an art form primarily based in sound, and you need to train your ear because that's the thing that literally helps listen. So the thing you can do that is, like I keep saying, listen, listen, listen. One tip that was given to me by a former teacher to help grow my ear in a very fun way is listen to something that makes you smile every day, saxophone or not. Literally, if it's just a famous country song, pop song, whatever you like to listen to, jazz song, classical song. Even though I'm a saxophonist, I love piano music. I love listening to piano concertos. They're like 30, 40 minutes long, but I love listening to them. Right now, I've re-listened to a bunch of times Rachmaninoff Concerto, Piano Concerto No. 2, one of the most famous piano concertos in the world. I also, this is just a personal quirk of mine, I love the Poulenc solo piano concerto that I love listening to. Listen to that quite a bit. But if you do want some saxophone recommendations, on the classical side, you can listen to anything by Arnold Bornkamp, Claude DeLong, Tim McAllister, Otis Murphy, or Nobuya Sugawa. Those are some of my top 5 personal favorites. Let me do that one more time. Arnold Bornkamp, Claude DeLong, Tim McAllister, Otis Murphy, and Nobuya Sugawa. On the jazz side, a couple of people I'd recommend you to listen to, a couple of heroes that a lot of people know. First one is Paul Desmond. Great, great man, especially in the vein of West Coast style, which is like this easy breezy listening jazz side, like almost the opposite of bebop technically. But he was made famous for playing in Dave Brubeck group, especially if you know the song Take 5. He's the alto saxophonist on it. So Paul Desmond is the alto saxophonist on Take 5 by Dave Brubeck. Besides that, you have a lot of greats like Charlie Parker. I played an excerpt from one of his songs earlier. And I cannot not mention John Coltrane. Such a legend, a lot of great music. And there's a bunch of even modern saxophonists that are doing a lot of great things. Like Chris Potter, phenomenal. Someone modern that's still making music right now that I like to follow is, I believe his name is Chad Lefkowitz Brown. I'm blanking a little bit, but Chad LB is his name. I'm pretty sure the LB stands for Lefkowitz Brown. So any of those names, fantastic. And like I said, listen, it'll help you. And I hope this saxophone class has been wonderful for you. It's been really fun for me to teach. I'm sure if you saw me several times get like really excited, start talking faster. It's something I'm very passionate about. And if you have any questions about any things I talked about, you can go contact me at this email address. It's my name, kirk.j.habana@gmail.com. One more time, kirk.j.habana@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in. I enjoyed so much teaching you guys. And again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for Vera Anselmo. Thank you, Anselmo Academy. And I hope to cross paths with any of you in the future. Take care. Bye.